back when we stitched the word box and the flower, I told you that we were going to put them aside and then use them later. Well, later is now here, and it is time to figure out a way to get this word box onto or mounted in some way so that we can then apply it to the hoop. So what I've done first is I have cut out the word box with my words stitched on it, and I have cut it out so there is 1/4 of an inch all the way around. You don't want any more than that because of the way we're going to mount it here in just a second, because if you have too much excess fabric, it's just too much. It's all too bulky on the back. All right, so I went ahead and measured 1/4 of an inch. You can just eye it, but like I said, try not to get more than 1/4 of an inch. You're also going to need some white cardboard. This is heavyweight poster board. I get it at Walmart, and it is a little bit heavier weight than just a regular poster board. It has enough weight. You could use probably just regular poster board. That would be fine. It just would be a little bit softer. You could use something like a cereal box that you know cut out. I use cereal boxes cardboard, cereal box cardboard for things all the time. The problem with that is that this fabric, the color is going to show through, and cereal board or some sort of cardboard like that is that kind of grayish brown color, and it will show through here. It'll make this look dull. You could take a cereal box, cardboard from a box like that, and you could like do spray adhesive and spray and glue a piece of white paper and then trim it. That would probably work. But if you can get heavyweight poster board that's already white, that's very convenient. Now I've just cut, no, let me talk about this. Okay, so this poster board, cardboard, we need to get the exact size of the word box onto here. So here is a quick little tip about how to do that. Now this is my original pattern. Remember I said ignore this because I totally changed how I was going to do the center of the flower. So you won't have that. Forget that. And I also mentioned that if you were using a longer word, you would have used this slight. They look really identical, but this one is teeny bit longer. So if you chose one of those words that's a little bit longer, you'll be using this one. I'm using this size. So to get this exact size of the box I'm using onto this white cardboard, poster board, I'm going to make my own kind of graphite paper. And I'm going to flip it over, and you can hold it up to the light if you need to see where the exact lines are. And then I've just taken a pencil. If you like to use pencils, let me just, unpaid advertisement here. These Ticonderoga pencils, they just feel so good. They have a nice soft, it's a number 2 lead, but it's just such a good quality lead. It's just like velvety smooth. But regardless, just use like a regular number 2 pencil and just color, just color with pencil over the back side of your line. So that now we can take this white cardboard and put this down. Now let me just quickly say, this has a good side and a side that's a little more yellow. This side is kind of shiny and white. This side is matte finish and a little bit more yellow. I'm going to make sure that the front side is the white shiny side. So I'm going to transfer this box, since it's a completely symmetrical box. It doesn't matter if you were doing this method with a shape that needed like letters, or a shape that needed to be right side up, you'd have to flip the shape. But since this shape is completely symmetrical, it doesn't matter if I do it on the back side of the cardboard. So now I can take my homemade graphite paper and I can lay it on this cardboard. I'm just going to hold it up to the light to make sure I've just got it, kind of centered. All right. And now all I need to do is hold that in place and just trace over that line. You can use the pencil, you could use another pen, like a ballpoint pen. But so that now when you pick this up, see that? Now I have transferred that design onto this cardboard. super easy way. That's a good tip for all sorts of things sometimes. So now all I need to do is cut this out. So I have my paper scissors. That doesn't matter if I'm cutting out cardboard. I'm just going to cut that out. And did I mention this? The reason I traced that graphite onto the back was just in case a little bit of this graphite shows on the front, it wouldn't show on the fabric, which, you know, it's so light, it's not going to show really. So, oh, well, glad I didn't lose that. All right, so now I have my piece of cardboard that is the exact size, and I did not cut that perfectly, but we'll live with it. So now I have my cardboard that's the exact size and the stitched word. To get this piece of fabric onto this cardboard, I am going to use glue. But I am not going to just put glue on the back of the word and stick it down, because that glue will soak through this fabric and, you know, it might discolor it, and I just don't want, I want it to be neat. I'm going to be using white tacky glue. And why am I using tacky glue? Because it's thick and sticky and it sticks much faster. If you use just a regular white glue, like an Elmer's school glue, it's much thinner. It's way more likely to soak through the fabric, even on the back side, and it's just more watery. This is very thick. I use this little applicator bottle that has a really yucky tip on it at the moment. Hang on, let me go clean that. All right, much better. So it has a fine line, like a fine tip on it that allows me to squeeze out a little teeny tiny dots of glue. And the way I store it is I keep the lid on it when I'm not using it, and I put it upside down in a baby food jar so that the glue is always down here at the tip. If I stored it up like this all the time, the glue would be in the bottom of the bottle, and this would probably dry and get clogged. So if you store your glue, really any bottle of glue like this, it will never get dried glue stuck in the tip. If you don't have one of these, that's fine. Just get some tacky glue and, you know, put a little blob of glue onto like a spare piece of cardboard and use a toothpick so that you can pick up a little teeny bit of glue and just put little bitty dots. That's fine. All right. So here's how we're going to do this. Paying attention to the fact that this was the nice whiter side. All right. I am going to flip this over and I am going to put it on my fabric like this. And I am going to hold it up to some light so that I can make sure that I'm lining up the edge of the, I know you can't see what I'm doing because I'm having to hold it up to my desk light. Okay, so I've got that lined up with the line that I can see drawn on the front side of this fabric that I drew way back when, before I stitched it. All right, is that right? Just get it in the right place because it matters. All right, okay. All right, and when you're dealing with corners, you don't want to fold this end over and glue it and then fold this, because you'll get a kind of a messy corner. It'll kind of show. So what I'm going to do is miter the corners. So I'm going to take my glue and I'm going to put a little bitty dot, right there in the corner of that corner of the fabric. Do you see how little glue that is? All right, and I'm going to fold it over at a 45-degree angle. Now, starting from here out, you got to be really careful that when you put your finger on a fabric that has glue, that you don't that's one of the biggest reasons is to use a little tiny dot of glue, because you don't want glue just soaking through the fabric. But if it does soak through, you don't want to touch this and then reach around and grab this on the front, and now you've put glue on the front. So be super careful this whole time that if you do get glue on your fingers, that you immediately wipe it off and you're not pinching the front side with a finger that has glue on it. So that's my public service announcement about that. So I am going to glue that corner down. And then I'm going to Put a little tiny dot of glue there. And I'm going to fold that corner over like that. And because this is white glue and not, like cool melt or hot glue, I do have to hold it for just a second. All right, but it sticks pretty fast. That's another reason to use the tacky glue. It sticks pretty quickly. Now, it's not 100% dry, but it is holding for me. All right, now I am going to do that side in a minute. So now I have my corners mitered. Now I'm going to come along and I am going to glue the end down like that. So let me put a little dot of glue on that point. Okay. I'm going to try to hold that point so it stays pointed. A little bit hard, but now I'm going to hold that, and I got a little bit of glue on my thumb. I don't know if you can see that, so I'm going to make sure that I wipe that off before I grab the other side of that. So make sure that hand's clean. I'm going to hold on to it for just a second. Give it a minute to stick. Okay, I think that's going to hold in place now. So now I'm going to come and I'm going to do the other side. You may find that your square of cardboard looks a little longer than the square you've drawn. That's because this fabric was stretched in the hoop, so it might have been stretched out just a little bit, but it shouldn't be too much. You can see if I'm going to just test it and fold that over, I'm pretty close to the line of the box. So now I'm going to go do that same thing with these corners. Now that I have both of the ends done, I am going to glue this long edge. So I am going to take my glue and I am going to put little tiny dots of glue all along there and a little dot there. So you can see again how little glue I am using. And now I am going to carefully fold this end, trying to tuck that fabric in. Got a little bit of glue, make sure my fingers don't get dirty. And then I'm going to fold this over. Try to hold it for just a second until it sticks. Alright, so see, I did a pretty good job of getting it on the line of the box that I drew earlier. Okay. And now I will come along. I might want to pull that just a little bit, stretch it tiny bit, but I think it's going to be all right. Okay, now I'm going to come do the same exact thing to this side. So that is done. And I did a really good job of getting on the line on the top edge. Here on the bottom edge, you can see that it's a little bit off, but that's okay. That is why I used the Frixion erasable gel pen. So now I can go take this back to my hair dryer and I can hit it with some hot air and that line will go away. All right, so that's okay. I just needed something there that was, that I could key off of for when I was gluing this. So that's why that line, don't make that line out of, a permanent marker or a pencil or something, because it will show up. Because it's just too hard. And the corners look pretty good, This is a little teeny tiny piece, so they're a little bit squared off, but that is okay. So that's how, and see, we didn't put any glue on the front side, so no glue has soaked through right here. It's all on the back. One other really quick tip that I should have said at the very beginning, I talked about being careful about the glue not getting any glue on your fingers and, holding this. But before you start this, make sure your hands are really clean because you're going to be doing a lot of manipulating and squeezing and pinching and pulling, especially on this front side of this white fabric. And if you start out with hands that are grimy, then this fabric is going to get grimy. So start out with really clean hands before you start this whole process. For these little tiny mushrooms, I mean, I guess that's what they are, like come to me. I had a couple other ideas, which is a whole different stitch, but it finally occurred to me, wait, let's use the cast on stitch that we've used for other things, but we'll do it a little bit differently and make these cute little tiny mushrooms. And I gotta say, I love them more than I thought I would. I mean, I love them a lot. They're so cute. So let me show you how to make these. Let me turn my hoop around. I'm going to work on this one right here. So just like before, when we were working on doing the cast on stitch, get that in the right place. Okay, so just as before, I want to work vertically, and I'm using 3 strands of DMC thread, but I am going to sort of break my rule. It wasn't really a rule, but I'm going to sort of go against what I said earlier. And I am not going to use the milliner's needle. I am going to use the 24 chenille needle. Why? Because these are tiny and delicate, and that milliner's needle, you know what it looks like. It's really huge and it's pretty thick. And I just didn't want to be, I'm going to have to work real closely right here, and I didn't want to have to force that big fat needle on these little, this little section that I'm about to do. So it works fine, and it's okay, but I just wanted these to be delicate, so it just called for a smaller needle. So let me show you. It's just the same. Whereas before we were working in more of a straight line for the cast on stitch, maybe making it a little tiny bit curved, but generally kind of an up and down line. Well, we want these to go around in a circle. How do we do that? Well, we do that by making the 2 points where we come up and go back in very, very close together. They're almost touching. So I've already stitched the stems. They're just in green, 3 strands of split backstitch. You did not need to see me stitch that again. Super, super easy. But now I am going to come up right on one side, like the top side of that stem, right there. And so now, previously, like for the other cast on stitches, we were coming way down and going back up. Well, now we're going to go back down into the fabric, super close to where we came out. Now, if you use a knot on the back on the end of your thread like I do. This is a little tricky because you kind of have to reach on the back and sort of pull that knot out of the way. You can't see what I'm doing, but I'm taking my fingers and I'm sort of pulling that knot out of place because it's a little bit tricky. You have to put your needle down, like I said, really close to where that thread came out, and then come up just like before. See if I can do it here and talk at the same time. Oh, look, first try. Okay, whoo. All right. So just like we did before, except that it's a little tiny space between there and there. So now I have, same as always, leave my needle in. There's my needle. Now I'm going to loop this around, and we are going to be doing 14 wraps or 14 loops. Now that seems like a lot of loops, and it is even for this short needle, but we have plenty of room. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm being careful not to choke up too tightly on this needle because I want to be able to pull the needle through, but you know, not so loose that these are really, you know, ruffly, wavy loops like they were like for the mushroom ruffle. So that was 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. So I'm really using, that's a lot of loops, so I'm really using this finger underneath here to keep those loops all on one side, keep them from twisting. All right, now same as before, gently, I'm going to push that needle through a little bit more, so gently pinch those, pull the needle through, shouldn't be a problem. All right, so it's going to be a little hard to see what I'm doing here because I have to kind of cover up that, I have to hold that stitch in place. So now, let me get it, come on, don't fail me now. Okay, I kind of have to hold that in place or it'll sort of flip over. And you know, before I am pulling this thread towards me, but now as it gets a little tight, I'm going to sort of hold this on this side, maybe even with this finger, and kind of now pull this thread to the left a little bit because that little circle is now going around and headed that way, the thread that's coming out of there, and I want to cinch it up all the way. Sometimes you can maybe put your needle right there at the end and keep pulling it. So just kind of arrange it and hold it, pull till it is, sometimes I'll put my fingernail against it and pull. I'm pulling underneath, I'm pulling that thread underneath. Sorry, I know it's really hard to see because I'm having to just cover everything up. All right, so that's as tight as I'm going to get it. Now, take the needle down. All right, but before we tie that thread off, there's one more thing to do. See how it flops? I don't want it to flop like that. I want it to stay flat against the fabric. So I am going to come up with the needle at the very top of that little circle, and then I'm going to just very carefully go over the top of that edge and make one stitch to hold it in place. And now there is my cute little cast on, sorry, that drifted. There's my cute little cast on stitch circle. There's just one last little detail for these little things, and that is to put a French knot in the center of each one, and I'm just choosing random shades of green out of the 4 greens we've been using. Just pick one. I did try to choose a green that was different than the stem color, but other than that, I mean, it doesn't really matter. So I'm using 3 strands, and I'm going to wrap the needle twice and go down right in the center, and there's a cute little French knot in the middle of that super cute little flower. I don't know, I'm just in love with these little babies. All right, so that is all for, I gotta just put one more French knot in and then those will be done. Stitching the moon is really fun and not very complicated at all. It may look a little complicated because we are going to be using not 1 but 2 needles. And the reason for that is that we are going to be couching these bugle beads onto the fabric. Now, we haven't done any couching on the whole rest of this design, which is unusual for me because I love to add couching. It's a great technique, but it's not complicated at all. But you will need 2 needles. So you need to use the short beading needle for the beads, and we'll use the number 24 chenille needle to couch. So there's a surface thread and a couching thread. The surface thread in this instance is going to be 1 strand of the, I think it's number 820, that's the darkest blue. And what we're going to do is, like when I started over here, come up through the fabric, all right, with this needle with no beads on it, and then we're going to string several, you know, you can do 4 at a time or 10 at a time or however many you want to do. But I already, let me see, at the moment I have 3 here that are unsewn. I'm just going to grab a few more. Well, I say I'm going to grab a few more. All right. All right, I'm just going to add 2 more to those that I already have on there. All right, so for the moment, I am going to take this needle and just set it aside. All right, just put it out of the way. Put it over there on my needle minder. So now I have these beads lined up, ready to go. Now from the bottom, I will take the other needle and I will, so I already have a stitch right here on this one. I'm going to push a bead down and get it in line, and then I'm going to come up with the what I call the couching thread right where the end of that bead is and right on the line where I want, the line that I want the bead to sit on. So now I'm going to take this thread and go over the thread that's running through the bead and go right back down, and then make sure that that thread goes over the other thread, not over the bead, and then I will push the next bead down and get it in place so I know right where to come up with my needle, right there. Ooh, I think I got a knot on the back. Whatever, I'll just leave it. So so come up right where the end of that bead is, go over, and now that one is couched. So it's like I said, it's so simple. The main thing is really just to make sure that when you are pushing these beads down, you're getting them close to the bead that was previous, the one that you just stitched down, so that you don't have big gaps, and so it'll help keep your lines smooth. So now I'm just going to finish outlining this, and then I'm just going to keep working around kind of back and forth until I fill in this moon with all of these bugle beads. Like this, I want to I want to end this line right here. So this is the beading needle that has, I was stringing all of the bugle beads on, but I don't have any other beads on it now. And so now I'm going to go down, push that bead so it's as tight as it can be. Now I'm going to go down through the fabric to secure that bead. Now I want to end that line. I don't mean I'm going to knot the thread or anything, but I do want that line to stop right there. So now I want to start over with a whole new line. So now I can come up through, try to make this as pointed as I can. So now I will come up through the back. This is still come up through the back with my short beading needle, all right, the small needle. And now I can thread some more, add some more bugle beads on like this. There's 2. Let me put a few more on. All right, so now I have some loaded up, and now I can go back to my couching so that now I can change directions and I can start going this way, and I'm going to put a line of beads right up against the line that I just stitched. So now I'll go back to couching. So let me do that. So here is my couching needle, couching thread, and I'm going to make sure that one is pushed up right where I want it to be so that I know where to bring my couching thread up and over. Just like that. And now I can push the next one down like that. And now I know where that one ends. So I can come up and couch that one. or couch the thread running through that one like that, and now I'm on my way. So now I'll just keep working around. And here's the moon. Line, my outside line is really smooth because I was able to follow the line. The inside one, because you're working with straight beads, trying to put them on a curve, it may not be 100% perfect. Like that one's a little wonky right there, but that's okay. It still looks like a moon. No one will ever notice it. So that is super fun. All those shiny beads. And I just love that color, this purple color on the blue. So anyway, that's our fun beaded moon. When it comes to stitching on the little bitty green seed beads, the chartreuse green beads for the fireflies, it's super simple. I mean, you just are gonna use the short beading needle. You're just gonna come up with one thread and go through the bead and then back down through the fabric. Now that's this very short explanation. There are two ways to do to sew on seed beads. You can do them so that, let's see if I can get this one on. I don't know if you can see it. Oh, nope. Oh, it's disappeared forever now. Well, anyway, you can lay them on the fabric, sew them onto the fabric so that the hole is up, so it looks like a donut. Or you can sew them onto the fabric so they are on their side. And I have chosen to do that with these because I want there to be, I don't really want a little bitty dot in the middle, and I want the more green of the side of the bead to show. So, all right, so let me show you. Super basic. Come up. Put one bead onto your needle and put it against the fabric and go down. Now you can leave it like that, but sometimes they want to flop a little bit. If you want to be a little bit extra, you can come back up next to the hole, the side of the bead, run your needle back through it, and then go back down. Technically, you're kind of trying to make, instead of one line under the bead, you're trying to make like an X to stabilize that bead. Does it make a difference? Perhaps, but these are pretty stable, so you just do whatever you want to do. If you want to put one strand of thread through it, that's fine. If you want to put 2 stitches and try to make them angled a little bit, that's fine too. I think you'll be fine either way. So those are those fun, sparkly little fireflies. Okay. This flower. Okay, I think I said way back at the beginning at some point that if you did not want to make this flower 3-dimensional, that was fine. That you could just stitch it right onto the fabric, just like we stitched, the mushroom or the ferns or whatever, and it would look great. But this is me just being extra because I wanted to make this flower a little bit 3-dimensional on the main hoop, on the purple fabric. So we've stitched it previously, we saw that, and now I have cut out around the flower. I've left about 1/2 inch. And now I have done what's called clipping, and that's a sewing term when you want to change directions for fabric or, fold it over on the back and you need to someplace for all that extra fabric to go. You can't just not have it clipped and fold it because it'll just be lumpy back there. So what I've done is I have used, these are some of my favorite scissors. I use them all the time when I am doing my felt ornaments because they are a 5-inch micro tip scissor. I do carry them in the shop because I loved them so much. And they are super sharp, but the term micro tip is correct because they have very, very sharp tips. And that comes in very handy when you are clipping this edge because you need to clip, perpendicular to the flower, and you need to clip right up to that stitching right there. Don't know how close I can get without it going out of focus. But so you have to carefully clip right up to there. And if you're trying to use dull scissors or huge scissors or scissors with kind of a blunt end, that's gonna be very tricky because you have to be very precise right there. I'm gonna state the obvious. don't don't cut your threads right here, okay? I mean, obviously. But do get pretty close, you know. You don't have to go up underneath the threads, but just go right up to them. So very precise scissors. I have one spot right here where I have not clipped. And as far as how often to clip, you know, kind of take a look at the flower. I tried to clip like everywhere there is a, like where two petals meet, where there's kind of a dip. I clipped there. And I tried to clip at the, like the top rounded part of a flower. I clipped there, you know, straight to it. You know, clip like some of the, like that one is much narrower right there. But you know, don't clip like every eighth of an inch. That's too much. You'll just have, it'll just be fabric fraying everywhere. And don't clip every 2 inches. You need more than that. So some of these are like half an inch apart, and some are a quarter of an inch or so. But sort of take a look at the design, and you kind of want to clip everywhere the line changes direction, either dips in or dips out. So here is one spot where I have not clipped yet. So I'm going to show you how slowly I go. I'm going to cut straight up right to there. So see how precise I can get with those super fine tips. All right, so that is how to clip the flower. Now we're back on the hoop. All right, obviously we're not going to leave it like this, but that's where it's going to go. Kind of keep an eye on the orientation. You know, this oval center is kind of up at the top at an angle. You know, like, in other words, don't put it like that, obviously. When you transferred your pattern on, or if you have the kit, you know, you'll have, this line has really faded, so it's kind of hard to see, but you'll have a little bit of a line there to guide off of. But in order to attach this to the hoop, to the fabric, we need to fold back these edges. And so just start anywhere and just fold it back until the white fabric is, you know, kind of hidden by the pink stitching on the edge. So like fold one back, and now I'm going to fold this one back. You don't have to fold it back hard, but just enough. And now you'll find out if you know, clipped in enough places. Like that one's kind of showing. I'm going to fold that one back first. Oops, sorry, you can't see that. I'm going to fold this one back first, and then this one. See if I can kind of hide that fabric and work my way around. So I'm not going to spend my time, you know, folding every single one back. I just sort of want to get a start so that I can place it on my fabric. I'm going to try to figure out what the right place is because my line has gotten so vague back there. And I debated at one point, you know, turning this over and gluing this. And I'm going to see. I don't really want to put glue on this, but I might end up putting some dabs of glue. I don't know. I'm just going to see how it goes because I want to avoid glue if I can, but it might just be too unwieldy to try to hold these, but I'm going to give it a try. So I'm going to fold some back and get it in place where it goes. I think it goes right about there. Okay, so now I am going to tuck that one. See if I can tuck those underneath there a little bit more. You know what? I might just go all the way around and kind of finger press all of these. Finger pressing is just folding it back and then, you know, pressing down on it with my fingers to give it kind of a crease so that it already has some memory about where I want it to go. So I think I'm just going to spend a little bit of time going all the way around and just folding these back, pressing down on them, and making sure if you need to make an extra clip on any of these to, if you just can't get that fabric hidden back there, well, make one more little clip if you just left too much of a space between, where you clipped before. You might need to add a little extra, one more cut, but I think I have enough. So I'm going to go do this and see how it looks. Here's what I've done. I went all the way around and folded it around just to make sure that I had clips in correct places, or I had enough clips made. And so then I folded down one little section up here, and I made sure that I had it lined up correctly where this flower goes. Little hard to see since it's covered up over here, but I kind of would like put it down and lift this up and make sure it was right. So it's pretty close. And so now, oh, and then I took a straight pin and I have pinned it to the fabric. So now it won't shift while I am manipulating it. In fact, I could even put another pin, but I think one pin is enough. Like down here, while I'm working up here, it gives me room to kind of, get to the back of it. And so now I'm going to take one strand and the number 24 chenille needle, and I am going to make sure those little sections of fabric are tucked to the back, sort of work in sections. So now, all right, so now that I've gotten that tucked back there, just gonna have to manipulate it with the needle a little bit. Okay, so now I have a little section done. I'm gonna take this one strand and I'm just going to make a stitch and stitch this down, and I'm stitching right through the chain stitched edge. Now I don't need to do like a solid line, but I do want to go, every once in a while. I mean, you might need a solid line. It just depends if the folded down fabric is showing through. So now in fact, I think I'm going to work that direction. As I go around, I'm going to make a couple of stitches, and then I'm going to either use my fingers, like this. I'm going to fold that fabric back, or I'm going to use the tip of the needle to tuck that white fabric under. I know that one. I just don't want white fabric to be showing. So I'm going to tuck as much as I can, and then I'm going to stitch. Sorry, I know it's really hard to see because my fingers are in the way again, but I kind of have to hold it in place. So I'm just going to make a stitch, and I'm going to tuck and stitch. Oh, that. So just go all the way around and just tuck and stitch. Just tuck it under with your fingers or with the tip of the needle. And then just make a little stitch right in that pink stitching to hold down that edge. And here's our flower all finished. And by folding that fabric underneath there, it kind of it sort of pads the back, which is the effect that I wanted, since I wanted it to be raised up a little bit. But I did find that as I was going around that, I told you up here, like I kind of was going in a line with the single thread following a line. I really ended up kind of doing almost like a whip stitch, like starting on the inside of the pink line and going around the pink line and then putting the needle under, and that kind of helped seal those edges and hide that white fabric a little bit easier. The only other thing is, like, some of these areas, I don't even know if you can see it, like right there, like when you kind of fold that pink stitched edge over, some of the white fabric sort of shows through here, like where the satin stitching and the pink chain stitching kind of got separated. And you know what? If that bothers you, just get a little bit of this blue thread and just make a couple of stitches. It's kind of showing right there and right there and right there. I haven't decided if I'm going to let that bother me or not. I don't think I am. I think, you can see it more if you look at it from the side, and you're not really going to be looking at this from the side. If you look at it from the top, you don't see it as much. So I think I am just going to let that one go and be done with this flower. Okay, it's a little bit unusual, but I hope you kind of learned a new technique, and maybe, I don't know, maybe you'll use it again sometime. There's only one more thing to do to finish up making this hoop, and that is to add our word. And I designed this so if you did not want to put a word on, it's totally fine. You can just leave it off. But if you do want to add your word, we are going to sew it on so that if you ever in the future, like if you wanted to change out the word, if you want to use this hoop again and put a different word, you could just make a new one and take this one off and put a new one on. But regardless, we are going to use one strand of the ecru thread, and I just have the word positioned where I want it, and I'm going to hold it in place, and I'm going to come up right here on the corner, kind of slightly underneath that corner, just through the fabric. And now I'm just going to go down and just catch a teeny tiny little bit of that fabric. I'm not putting the needle through the cardboard, just the fabric. That's just a little, and you can put, one or two stitches on each corner. One stitch would be plenty, I think, probably. But just go in at an angle on each corner, and then just go around to each corner and do that and tie off your thread, and you are finished. So all that is left is for me to say thank you for joining me on this stitch along. I hope you had a great time, and I hope that you will join us for the next stitch along. I run them all throughout the year, and there will, I'm going to guess, another one meaningful word stitch along next year. This is year number 6, so I can expect there will be one next year, and I hope to see you then too. But anyway, thank you so much. I hope you had a wonderful time stitching this design.